Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ross-Ade Stadium. It is the final day of the regular season as the Purdue Boilermakers get ready to take on the Indiana Hoosiers. It's the 125th meeting all-time between the teams, the 98th for the Old Oaken Bucket, and a couple of guys that know all about that bucket are with me today, Pete Quinn and Kelly Kitchel. It is the last game for Pete Quinn in his 32-year broadcasting career, so we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. But you guys have both played in the bucket game. Give me what today means to you as an Indiana native and as a Boilermaker.
I don't think, even as I grew up in Indianapolis, and like all people that don't go to college in Indianapolis, they're Notre Dame football fans and IU basketball fans. So I grew up a Notre Dame football fan and an IU basketball fan, but then when I started to get recruited, I fell in love with Purdue. And I didn't really understand how important the bucket game was until I was playing in one. And the head coach at Purdue was Jim Young in his first year. The head coach for IU is Lee Corso. Both programs are doing really well. Would do the next couple of years. And we lost that game. And I remember how bad that hurt. And I went into the locker room, the visitors' locker room. They had a big chalkboard with the markers. And I knew Lee Corso through recruiting. I wrote on the board, "You'll never beat Coach Corso. You'll never beat me again." And I signed my name. Senior year, we beat him for the third year in a row. He comes across the field, he shakes my hand, he goes, "You were right, we never beat you again." I always had a special place in my heart for Lee Corso because of that experience.
Kitch?
I'll tell you, I grew up in a basketball household, and the Purdue-IU rivalry was always big. And then once I got here, the football rivalry was just, I understood the magnitude of it. And really, we had a lot of great experiences. We were lucky enough fortunate enough to go to a bowl game every year and, win the Big Ten. But there's a great feeling either going to get the bucket, on your sideline or on the opposite sideline. And there's nothing worse, really, though, is if they come rushing across to grab the bucket from your sideline. It's an awful feeling. My junior year, I remember it was a sloppy 13-7 game down there. We needed to punch. It was awful.
Rain.
Oh,
Monsoon,
monsoon. And we just needed to punch it in from the one, and we all of us old linemen, we were skinning our wheels. We just couldn't quite get it in, and I remember them after the game rushing across and grabbing that bucket. And I just it was just a pit in your stomach that you feel like you failed. Not only just failed, personally or for your team, but you kind of failed for the whole state. There were Purdue fans, and you're like, oh, we failed everybody, and so it kind of just motivates you for the next year to go get that thing again, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal in the state of Indiana.
Pete, the Boilermakers and the Hoosiers come in today at 3-8, and the cliche is true. You can throw the records out, but I think there are 3-8 teams that are really headed in a little bit opposite directions. You've got a first-year coach at Purdue. I think people are excited about what Ryan Walters is doing in recruiting and what the potential of the future holds. And then you've got a seventh-year guy on the other side who's possibly coaching in his last game today. It'll be interesting to see how these teams respond this afternoon.
Well, in today's environment, it's totally different than it's been for the first 30 years I broadcast and the time as a player. The football season doesn't end after the last game. Then you have to sit around and wait to see who's going to transfer, who's transferring in, who's leaving. So it's really hard for me sometimes to worry about what's going to happen because you don't know. You don't know who's going to play year to year. And the passion that Kitch and I had, Kitch and I both played for Purdue for 5 years. The passion we had for the bucket game, there's kids playing the game today. They're 6-year super seniors. It's their first bucket.
Right.
It's not quite the same, but I do 100% agree with the direction of the Purdue program. I very much, and I mean this sincerely, I'm not saying this to be optimistic, I really enjoyed this season. I enjoyed watching the coaches try to figure things out, watching the kids trying to figure things out. And Joe Tiller, we talked about a lot, was 9-3 his first year. And if anyone asked him, plenty of people did, how did you become 9-3? He goes, because I brought my whole staff. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to spend the first year coaching my coaches. And I think Ryan Walters spent this year trying to figure out where his coaches should be, what they should be teaching. He had philosophies, but he's going to learn a lot from this year. I will say this about both teams. I think both teams are better on their record. IU competed against Penn State. They competed against Ohio State. They've got big-time athletes on that team. they could win this game, and Purdue's going to need to play a great game to keep the bucket.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the game, Kitch, and I think the big question a lot of people are asking, who's playing, who's not playing today for Purdue. The Boilermakers were without Hudson Card last week, their starting quarterback. They were without Nick Scorton, one of their top defensive players. It appears both will play. Neither one is on the injury report, which would lead you to believe that we'll see both of them this afternoon.
Yeah, which will be huge. But I'll tell you what, last week we played a Northwestern team that's going to a bowl game. They were playing for everything. They just announced their coach was going to be the full-time guy. It was the last game at Ryan Field. They had everything to play for, and we had the ball with 2 minutes to go, down one score, with backup quarterbacks splitting time between, without our one of our best defensive players. And so this team competes. We will compete, and and if we can get our guys back, it makes it an even better situation. So if we've got Hudson Card back there and he's able to be healthy enough to deal today, and you got Nick Scorton on the other side, you got him and Cajun Jenkins on both sides. It's just a great 1-2 punch on both sides. So it's huge to get those guys back, because we know even with their backups, we're able to compete at a high level.
The Boilermakers will be without a few players today. TJ Sheffield is gone. The co-captain from the program is gone, completely gone.
Crazy.
Andrew Sawinski is out today. And looking at the depth chart, Pete, and that leaves me with Deion Burks, Jaden Dixon-Veal, Jerron Tibbs, and Armad Branch. Those might be your 4 receivers today.
I think when I was prepping for this game, and I know Purdue, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time. If you need to prep for Purdue this time of year, you're not doing your job. But I was reading about IU, and one of the most insanely jealous moments I felt in a long time, I looked at their offensive line starters. Mm-hmm. They've had one player miss one start on their offensive line, and we've been rotating kids all through the season. We've lost 3 kids for multiple games, 2 for the season. I think that was the biggest struggle for Purdue this year offensively,
right,
was just getting the offensive line settled. So hopefully we'll get those kids back next year and everybody's healthy. But IU's got, when you look at their team, they've got some legitimate Sunday players. Mm-hmm. It depends on who plays. I say one of the keys every year is our stars have to play like stars. Well, our stars have to play like stars today.
By the way, Daniel Johnson and Preston Nichols, a couple of offensive linemen for Purdue, are listed as questionable today. So that 5-man rotation, we're going to see what patchwork they have to go with in the starting lineup today.
And we were talking a little bit earlier. Marcus Johnson deserves to be. I don't know if there's an offensive line award in the Big Ten or a coach award in the Big Ten. He's done as good a job as anybody is putting this group together. We've been able to rush for over 300 yards in 2 games, and with an absolute patchwork up front of guys that probably didn't even think they were going to play very much this year, just because of the injuries and everything going on. I give a lot of credit to him.
Pete Quinn's phone is blowing up, as it always
is. It is. It's
games.
Crazy. I apologize.
And one of the reasons for that is he's Pete Quinn. The other reason is today is his final broadcast with the Boilermakers. After playing at Purdue for 5 years and spending the last 32 years in the booth, he's going to spend time with his grandkids and down in Florida during the football season. We have a greatest, I don't know if it's a greatest hits compilation, but here's a few seconds of Pete Quinn from back in the day that you might enjoy. Roll that tape.
Senior center Pete Quinn, always alert to what's going on around him, was credited with his first career touchdown. And some singing by none other than Purdue's less than subtle locker room crooner, offensive center Pete Quinn. Senior center Pete Quinn, always alert to what's going on around him, was credited with his first career touchdown.
I don't know if there's anything else we can give you in the Pete Quinn experience to explain it. Your emotions today, sir, on your last game.
Surprisingly, I'm fine.
And some singing by none other than Purdue's less than subtle locker room crooner, offensive center Pete Quinn.
Rob or Aaron are all in the booth, and I'm not. That's going to be tough for me. But right now, I feel pretty happy.
Senior center Pete Quinn, always alert to what's going on.
We've got 3 grandkids now. We've got 2 players to be named. So we're growing very rapidly, and so I'm excited to have the Falls back, to be at the grandkids. I'm excited. We have a place in Naples, as you know. We'll spend more time in Naples. But I'll still come to most of the home games, if not all. I'll still be a huge Boilermaker fan, but I'm a little bit shocked that I'm not more emotional. But the closest I came to emotions is hearing Kelly Kitchel was our guest speaker at the Old Oaken Bucket luncheon, and he hit it out of the frickin' park. And the words he spoke really hit me hard. But other than that,
well,
it's a game.
I'll tell you.
It's a bucket game.
You said, what more can you say about Pete Quinn with the touchdown and the singing? I'll tell you what more you can say. I was able, when we went to Northwestern last weekend, on Friday night, I was able to spend some time with Pete and about 15 of his teammates.
That was a good night.
And it was a good night. But I'll tell you one thing. I was the only non-Jim Young era guy there, and I'm so fortunate to be there. And to a man, every single guy came up and said, Pete Quinn is one of the best people that we know. He's kept us together. He is absolutely the reason that we were able to do the things we did as players and how we're so tight-knit and together now. He goes, we wouldn't be in this house together if it wasn't for Pete. So, I mean, you can't say enough about him as a player and as a human being.
Well,
so
Pete,
we're going to miss you.
We did have a little bit of heartbreak earlier
that.
this week. One of your teammates, Dave Young, who was with us in the booth just a few weeks ago, passed away. Dave, one of the greatest tight ends, not only to play at Purdue, but really revolutionized the way that position was played in the Big Ten, and had some problems after he had left Purdue, but it was great to see him back a few weeks ago, and we lost him earlier this week at the age of 64, and that's way too early.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something that's really scary. I keep track of, I had about 145 guys I played football with in those 5 years, and we have lost 26, which that blows all the insurance tables out the window, all for different reasons. But Dave truly was, in my opinion, the greatest tight end maybe to play the game in college football. And he just made some bad turns after he got out of school. He was drafted very high. I think he's the first draft pick in the second round by the Giants. Their first round draft pick was Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
And he should have had a 15-year all-Pro Bowl career, and he didn't because he made some bad choices. But he found himself late in life. He's very close with his son, his grandsons. They came to the game with him. I guarantee you his son's going to be in my life the rest of my life. And he was just a good guy. Everybody loved Dave. He was a superstar, but he didn't act like a superstar. You know, he was clearly one of the greatest players in the country, but he was one of the guys. He was just our teammate.
By the way, we'll be honoring Pete on the field today during the game between the first and second quarters. So those of you that are heading to Ross-Ade Stadium, please stand up and applaud and cheer when Mr. Quinn is announced. Back to the game for a second. Let's talk about what the Boilermakers need to do to come out with a win and finish with 2 out of 3 to get on the winning side. Hudson Card at quarterback. I think this is an Indiana defense, Pete, that has really struggled to stop the pass in the last few weeks. Boilermakers, if they can get the right receivers on the field, could have a big day throwing.
Well, that's a big if.
That's a big if.
You got to have somebody to throw to.
to.
So, but yes, they have struggled, and it was kind of depressing prepping for the game, because when you look at the Big Ten stats and you look at the defensive category, it's not pretty.
No.
I mean, Purdue and IU are 13th or 14th in virtually every statistical category. But what's kind of interesting about that is I think all three of us feel pretty good about the direction of the defense.
Yeah.
There's some things to watch for today. I think you got a good rivalry for most tackles for loss.
Yes.
We got 3 guys playing in this game today, one for IU, 2 Scorton and Jenkins for Purdue that could do it. We've got Dylan Thieneman has a chance to break some records. So there's a lot of cool things that are happening in this game, and the bucket is the bucket.
We're talking about throwing the football, Kitch, and this is a team that's run the ball for more than 300 yards each of the last 2 weeks. Maybe that's the plan if you can get 5 healthy offensive linemen up front today.
Well, we haven't had 5 healthy offensive linemen. We've still been able to do it, and that's what we talked about before the Northwestern game. Is we got to be able to run the football when they know we're going to run the football, and we were able to do that. I mean, Northwestern, we had 2 backup quarterbacks that never thrown a meaningful college pass before that time, and we were able to run for 300 yards. And so that's going to be the key to this thing is if you can get Maccabee to break tackles, Tyrone Tracy to break tackles, and Hudson Card, even whatever his injury was, I don't think we ever came out and said what the injury was, but whatever it is, he's got to be a threat in the running game too.
Yep.
And because we did see that with when Ryan Brown came in, he was a threat in the running game, and it opened it up for some of the other guys. So That's going to be, that's going to be a big thing. So they've got to be able to run this football today and, keep that clock moving and not be 3 and out with the clock stopped all the time, trying to throw it all over the place.
I think one of the things that will help Purdue today, though, is the fact that Tyrone Tracy Jr., before he was a running back, and a pretty good one at that, played 5 years as at a wide receiver position. I can envision a game today where you're going to have both Mockabee and Tracy on the field at the same time.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. If you remember in the spring game, were you here in the spring game? I'm
Yes.
pretty sure we were down receivers then, and Kyle Adams and Christian G-Love both played receiver in that one in the spring game.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're signaling on the sideline. I don't know how many we got, but that's
by the way the pseudo spring.
Yeah,
Really have an open
right.
game
But
this year.
those guys were. Maybe it was just a spring scrimmage that I saw, but so you may see some guys playing different. I don't know if that'll happen, but you may see some guys playing some different positions they haven't played.
Well, you remember the infamous Rod Woodson game?
Yes.
By the way, if Dylan Thieneman gets 2 solo tackles, he breaks Rod Woodson's freshman record. But Rod Woodson played offense in a bucket game for the first time in his career and was dominant. Was absolutely
and also
dominant.
ran kicks back.
And ran kicks
Did a
back.
little bit of everything.
That was the best individual effort I've ever seen in a football game.
Sold more popcorn that day than any of the vendors in the stands.
Yeah,
at Ross-Ade
exactly.
Stadium. Tremendously versatile guy. On the offensive side for Indiana, I've been more impressed the more I've watched Brendan Sorsby play. Redshirt freshman quarterback. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. He's hard to bring down. And all of a sudden, he and Donovan McCulley have found a little bit of a combination. McCulley, a converted quarterback at the wide receiver position, has 43 catches this year.
They've got some talent. Sorsby's the real deal. He missed some games due to injury this year, but he's the real deal, and he can hurt you. Purdue struggled all year long with running quarterbacks. He can run, and he likes to run. He's a big guy. He likes to run.
E.J. Williams, DeKeese Carter, those are some other guys that he'll be throwing to today. But I think the one thing you want to make them catch one-dimensional, take away that running game, force them to throw it, and then see if Jenkins and Scorton can go to work against that IU offensive line.
I mean, that's always the goal, right? That's always the goal against any team, is to make them one-dimensional. And so it's going to be the goal coming in this one. You want to try to take away what their strength is and see if you can, capitalize on some of their weaknesses. So that is going to be an interesting one, because you're right, with Scorton and Jenkins on the outside bearing down on you, that's a whole different ball game when you're trying to throw into receivers.
We have a lot of questions coming into this game, Pete, and the one we were talking about before we came on here was who's going to return punts for Purdue today, because T.J. Sheffield and Andrew Sawinski are your punt returners, and neither one of them's playing.
And they're going against a really good punter. So that could be a key to the game today, is how we respond to that. And you have to make a choice as a coach. Do you want to put somebody back there that you're very, very confident they can secure, just make the catch, the Scott Craig, my old punt returner Scott Craig thought process, or do you want to put somebody back there that's a threat to break one, because Purdue's had success with Sheffield returning punts this year.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's going to be interesting to see.
I mean, Thieneman starts out at 45 yards deep sometimes anyways. He might be back there for the punt. And I mean, he's quick enough to close the gap starting out that deep, and maybe he can field punts. Maybe he'll be a guy that we have to play everywhere.
I got to tell you,
I like that.
Of those two choices, I'm taking the sure-handed receiver, because if you look, Nebraska lost its last 4 games this year and is not going to a bowl, and Nebraska was minus 17 in the turnover margin.
Yeah.
You can't turn the ball over and win football games, period.
No, when you look at the season stats are relatively useless till this time of the year. Then you can really start to see some trends. And you have to look deeper than the stats for improvements and things like that. But the stats are somewhat meaningful right now. And you look at the teams that have a really high plus turnover ratio, they're at the top of the league. Real low turnover ratio, or real high turnover ratio, they're at the bottom.
Well, Northwestern's an example. Northwestern's a plus, and they're headed to a bowl this year.
Yeah.
Could get 7 wins.
And I will go to my grave saying we're a much better team than Northwestern.
Before we get to our picks to click today for the season finale, let's get a quick question about what you learned about this team this season and the biggest things that need to improve going into 2024.
What I learned was, and what I was looking for and hoping for, was if they kept playing hard, if they quit, and they did not. They never did. No matter what the circumstances, they played hard. Even if they were down big, the kids kept playing hard. So keep that up, and the winning's going to happen. The things I'm looking for next year is to just get the coaches and the team know each other a little bit more, get the right guys in the right places, and you can't control this, but it'd be great not to lose 12 players to injuries.
And to lose another 10 or 15 guys to the portal next year. And that's something I think we're going to see starting here probably next week, you'll start to see announcements from players that are going to head in. The portal opens officially on December 4th. And Kitch, I'm sure there's going to be a line going out. There'll probably be a line coming in, and that's college football again in 2023.
It is, and I hate it. I do hate it, but it's where we're at right now. And what scares me is you have some of these kids, they think that they put their name in the portal and all of a sudden the phone's going to ring.
Right.
And that just doesn't happen all the time. And I wish they would come out a little more publicly with some of the stories of guys putting their name in the portal and not being picked up, or not getting a Power 5 offer or something like that. And because I think guys at this level, they think they put a couple games on tape and showed a flash here or there, and all of a sudden they're gonna just get picked up. Everybody's gonna start calling. I'm not sure that'll happen. So I hope that we don't lose a ton of guys, because they were recruited here for a reason. And I hope that they see the significance in a Purdue degree, and that we're on the come here, that things are good are going to happen here in the future.
Well, we want to thank Matt from Syracuse and everybody who's been watching, not just today but all season. So let's close it off. We'll give Mr. Quinn first choice today. Picks to click, sir, for the bucket game.
All right, I'm going to steal a couple. Scorton Jenkins on defense, and I'm sorry for that.
You're going to take
I did it last week, so it's okay.
Did you really?
I did 2 weeks ago. I took them both.
Well, the reason I say sacks, Scorton 8, Jenkins 7.5. One of them is going to win the title of sack leader in the Big Ten. So and they're both going to be after it big time. And on offense, I'm gonna go with the guys. I'm sure the guy you both want, most important person on any team, the center.
That was mine.
Gus Hartwig. He's a man playing with boys. He's been a force this year. He's healthy, and I think Hartwig calms those kids down. And I've seen that. You gave a lot of well-deserved credit to our line coach, but I think Gus Hartwig had a lot to do with that too.
You're right.
All right. Kids, is anybody left over?
Yeah, I think we got a few, but I'm gonna go on the defensive side. I'm gonna go with a guy that had his best game last week, and I think he's getting better every week, and he rotates in. It's Mo Omonade. And Mo had his first solo sack. He had another half sack with Yanni. It was the West Lafayette connection there for another sack, which was awesome. And I think Mo is getting better every week, and he's a force in there when he comes in. And when they rotate those guys, I think all those interior guys are playing pretty good football right now. And having Mo be able to come in there, his motor. So I'm going to go with him on defense. On offense, since you took Gus, I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy has just been running the ball so well. We saw him, I hopefully he's 100% healthy this week. I saw he broke away. No one would typically ever catch him, and he got caught on his long run there in the fourth quarter. I think he's been nicked up a little bit, so I'm hoping that he got all those kind of taken care of and he's healthy. And can rush for another 150 plus today.
All right. Well, I was going to take Zion Steptoe defensively. Since you left me Dylan Thieneman,
yeah,
I'm going to take Dylan Thieneman. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Offensively, I'm going to go with Devin Mockabee. Devin Mockabee needs 235 yards today, I believe, to become a 1,000-yard rusher. Special things happen in the bucket game. Who knows?
Who knows?
Could be a great day for him. We want to thank everybody again for watching us. Thank Mr. Quinn for his service to Purdue football and the university. And again, we'll be honoring him throughout the day. For Kelly Kitchel, for Pete Quinn, I'm Tim Newton. Boiler up. We'll see you next season.
Boiler up.
Boiler up.